Alright, lots of sunlight again today. I was trying to test the drone in terms of whether or not the connection is good when there's a lot of objects around, trees and buildings and so forth. Seems okay so far. And with that in mind, what did I read today? How about this one, where apparently there was a drone that crashed, and it says here, UN peacekeepers say Israeli drone crashed into their headquarters without inflicting casualties. Wow, how big was this drone? The force known as UNIFIL said that by flying drones over Lebanon, Israel was violating a UN Security Council resolution that helped end the 14-month Israel-Hezbollah war. And I guess in defending it, they were saying this drone didn't actually have any weapons on it, just a camera. And the funny thing was, according to this anyways, it says they were preparing to actually take the drone down, but then all of a sudden it fell down on its own. A lot of attention still around the world with people using drones, especially for military purposes, huh? And then how about this one, which is kind of interesting in terms of people trying to beef up their defense. It says here, drones, systems hack test Europe's aviation security defenses. A hack hitting major airports across Europe, followed by drone incursions in Copenhagen and Oslo, are testing the weak spots of the region's aviation infrastructure and raising fears about coordinated attacks leading to increased disruption. In Denmark, drones halted flights at Copenhagen's main airport on Monday for several hours, with Danish Prime Minister Mette Frederiksen linking the incident to a series of suspected Russian drone incursions and other disruptions across Europe. That's kind of scary, huh? If you spent, let's just say, millions of dollars on all these security measures to block out drones and so forth, somebody just hacks into it, shuts it down, and then that's it. You're defenseless. So you need something manual too, I suppose. It says the disruptions, though, lay bare how vulnerable the civil aviation sector's operations can be, with outages down the supply chain rippling across airports and airlines operations, leading to hundreds of delays and cancelled flights. As so-called hybrid war threats grow, including drones, GPS interference, and hacks, experts say aviation regulators need to take more proactive steps to mitigate against risks to cybersecurity, navigation systems, and overall safety. I would imagine there, again, it's not a matter of trying to create more laws and restrict more people, like just like a regular person. Again, you need to find ways to actually deal with this stuff in general, huh? And with that, I was reading a bunch of other interesting things, especially updates in regards to that situation here in BC, where there are a bunch of ostriches that have been ordered by the CFIA to essentially kill them all because they say they're infected and so forth. And the argument is they haven't really done tests. And apparently, even though the RCMP and everyone are there to, in a sense, kill them all, there's something that came up where there's now an order saying they can't do it. So apparently, it was the Sealeaks First Nations, and a representative intervened by declaring that the land is in unceded territory under their protection. So they issued a cease and desist order to halt the cull and safeguard the animals and the environment. So because of this, Canada's Supreme Court granted an interim stay, pausing the cull pending further review, where the CFIA must respond by October 3rd. So for now, all these ostriches are, I guess, safe per se. So it's kind of interesting. This is the first time I kind of heard about this topic where they're just intervening like in this way. I've often heard stories where there are First Nations that say this is their land, for example, so they regulate everything, not, let's just say, the government here. But I've never actually seen something like this come up where they read a story and then they come in and intervene, claiming, for example, that it's on their land, so they can't do anything about it. So many interesting twists, huh? And the other crazy thing was how the workers there, they had all these like hazmat suits and stuff like that before they were going to carry out, I suppose, the cull. People caught them on camera trying to actually disable the cameras around the area because they've been live streaming this, I guess, for the world to see. And you can see people are now trying to go after them for doing unsafe, I guess, procedures in trying to take the camera down. And people are wondering why. For example, from the looks of it, some of them are trying to tape up the lens or remove them permanently. And it makes you wonder in relations to what I talked about yesterday, for example, them banning the airspace and all that and whatnot. It's right. Is this really about safety, or is it more about control in terms of who can and can't, let's just say, use a certain piece of equipment to document the situation and all that? I mean, again, it doesn't make sense to me. And the only other thing I kind of read in regards to this, which makes you think, this story was actually written back in 2021, saying here, BC Ostrich Farm developing antibodies that could put an end to the coronavirus. So apparently this person, I guess, refused to leave the farm area initially, even though they said people had to, just during all the pandemic and so forth. And during that time, I suppose, apparently it was proven that these birds developed extreme, I guess, immunity to the virus, which is very valuable, I suppose, in terms of research. So that's the argument I read for why they should keep these birds, because they could be useful for research purposes. And it says here, working with a lab back east, we inoculated our hens with a dead COVID-19 virus. The hen produces antibodies in 2 weeks, and 2 weeks after that, she puts them into her eggs, says Esperson, adding that this is one of the reasons they were so hesitant to abandon their 500 birds. This is a very natural process, and last year we were able to block 99.9% of the coronavirus if it was infused in a face mask. So that's kind of interesting if that's true and all. And to further that point, I suppose, it says in a report published last year by a company called Dr. Yasuhiro Tsukamoto, Dean of the Graduate School of Life and Environmental Sciences at Kyoto Prefectural University and co-CEO of Ostrich Pharma USA, said, quote, "We have produced ostrich antibodies to many viruses, bacteria, and allergens, but we were pleased to see how quickly the ostriches developed immunity and placed the anti-SARS-CoV-2 antibodies in their eggs. We were even more pleased to see how capable the antibodies were in blocking the virus that caused COVID-19. 10 ostriches were vaccinated, and the antibodies from their eggs have already been used in mass nasal drops and candies." Again, that's fascinating if this is all true, and this is back in 2021, where it makes it even more nonsensical of why they just want to kill them all. Like, wouldn't you want to use them for research in this way too? Especially, again, to my understanding, there's countries that are willing to actually take them. They'll pay all the expense and so forth. So that makes absolutely no sense. Like, the more I'm even thinking about this. Because the other thing I read, which was actually related to health, it seems like, it just kind of boggles the mind. Apparently in the US, there are talks on how people are saying things like Tylenol may be a potential cause for things like, for example, autism and stuff like that. That I don't know, of course. I'm not a doctor, and I would imagine you have to do a ton of research to verify whether or not something's true or not. But with this, it seems like there's a lot of people that are being rebellious, and doctors in general, where they're making things like TikTok videos where they are pregnant and they're taking Tylenol intentionally. And you'd have to wonder, okay, why?
28 weeks pregnant. You know what I'm gonna take? Some Tylenol, acetaminophen. It's gonna work like a charm, and my baby won't have autism.
Now, I'm assuming anyways, they're trying to do that to prove a point where they think it's safe, for example, for people that are pregnant. But when I'm thinking of this critically and all that, why would you do that? Because most medicines, to my knowledge, they all have some kind of side effect in general. And if you don't need to take like the medicine in this case, why would you put yourself and your baby at risk in that regards for a potential quote side effect? Again, it's different if you are actually suffering from something and so you're taking that medication to deal with that issue. But in this case, if there's nothing wrong with you, why would you take that risk? That doesn't make any sense. And here's a perfect example, in my opinion, of just life in general and topics where critical thinking and common sense doesn't seem to be so common. Like here, I can imagine most people would look at this and say, well, this is a doctor. Automatically, for example, you'll listen to them. But if you were to think about this again critically, it seems like there's another motive on why the person is doing this. For example, it's an act of rebellion, like maybe she hates whoever's in charge, so this is a way to get back at them. Or since this person is a doctor, maybe throughout this person's career, they've been recommending people to take Tylenol, for example, while they're pregnant. So you can imagine if it turns out, let's just say there is something to this where the side effects aren't good for people that are pregnant. Can you imagine this person's world crashing down knowing this is the advice they've given people? That's my personal opinion, just thinking about this rationally. And to further that point, even if someone's a quote doctor, you need to ask the questions. It needs to make sense. Because even with like a little simple search, I tried to research, okay, does this company themselves actually recommend it for pregnant people? And you can read here, their post says here from Tylenol is back in 2017. It says here, we actually don't recommend using any of our products while pregnant. Thank you for taking the time to voice your concerns today. Now, maybe something's changed throughout all those years, but if a company themselves doesn't recommend it for those particular situations, doesn't that get you to think? How is it that you came up with that conclusion when the company themselves, who probably spends millions or billions of dollars in their product where they want to brag about every single use of it, they don't even recommend it for this case? That should make you wonder, isn't it? It's kind of like the point I brought up before. You only know as much as you were taught, and you have to be open-minded to new information that comes in. Like with all this medical stuff, for example, I'm not a doctor and so forth. I'm kind of just relying on what people say and then trying to put the pieces together. But I'll be open-minded, where if someone presents a different set of facts, I have to analyze it with an open mind. Food is a great example. I mean, one year they're saying something is a superfood, it's so great for you, and then the next year they're saying it causes cancer. I mean, that's been a pretty common theme with so many food items too, right? Otherwise, like here, for the quote expert in the field, you're not actually judging things factually and rationally. It's more about maintaining your personal belief. And that doesn't really have a place in science per se in this regards, in my opinion. All right, see you guys later.